Well, the new national poll shows a shocking level of bigotry toward immigrants. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle now. And Bill, the numbers don't lie. 6 in 10 now say that migrants are a burden to the country because they take jobs and benefits that should belong to natives. 55% support deporting those migrants who are temporarily, at least, in the country. And only 7% say that we should let them stay and be residents. Bill, what do you think of the latest poll of the Mexican public that I just read the results of?
I knew there was a hook on there somewhere. The first thing that comes to mind is sauce for the goose, is sauce for the gander. As we discussed in our segment on asylum in the last show, Mexico has had a policy, not just Mexico, China as well, and a number of other countries for the last half century have been taking advantage of American generosity, kindness, decency, and all the rest to basically roast us on a spit. And when somebody finally begins to push back against this, the left, of course, decries it as the end of the world and descent into Nazism because it means the end of all of the things that they have done to destroy this country that benefit them and their party. So when you hear Mexicans saying that we have a problem with illegal immigration and we need to get tough on our southern border, then what you're hearing is the citizens of a country finally being confronted as the victims of a policy that they had been the perpetrators of for half a century.
And let me just clarify for our viewers that this was not just some right-wing organization that did this poll. This is actually the Washington Post that teamed up with another organization to do, I believe it was 1,200 face-to-face interviews in 100 different voting precincts in Mexico to get these kinds of results. Bill, part of the article talks about how the Trump administration's immigration policy, which essentially is forcing asylum seekers to wait in Mexico, and that's before this week's new rule that basically said if you pass through Mexico, then you don't get asylum in the United States. We just did a Bill Whittle Now episode about that earlier. But anyway, it's basically increased the pool of migrants in Mexico. The picture I get in my mind, Bill, is that the highway through Mexico is suddenly a traffic jam. And the longer those immigrants from Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Africa, or wherever they're coming from, the longer they sit there, the less the Mexican public likes it.
So basically what this information is telling us is that the Mexican people, who not only are very comfortable with coming to the United States illegally, but also apparently, at least for the last several years, are very comfortable allowing other people to pass through their country to come to the United States, are suddenly realizing that the people who they thought were just passing through to go give the Yankees some trouble aren't passing through, and now the people of Mexico are facing the fact that they have to start dealing with the problems that they had not only been passing on to the United States, but actually contributing in large part to in the United States. So you can only imagine my shock and surprise, and also my sympathy, which is just simply through the stratosphere. Can't even barely begin to tell you how upset I am about all of this. This is like me telling somebody in a neighborhood, let's say I live in a decent neighborhood and I've got a guy who's 2 doors down, he's very rich and I hate his guts. And I want to go and I want to watch his cable and I want to sit on his couch and eat out of his TV and all that other stuff, and he's suddenly not letting me, the bastard. And so I tell all the other people in the neighborhood, hey, go to that guy's house, he's got tons of money. Well, they get to his gate and they can't get in, and now all of a sudden they want to watch my TV and they want to eat out of my refrigerator and they want to sleep on my couch. And now I'm showing a great deal of moral outrage how somebody could possibly ever assume that they have a right to sleep in my house without my direct invitation. You can only imagine my shock.
Bill, another part of this poll reveals that 51% of Mexicans support using the country's newly formed National Guard to combat migration of undocumented immigrants in and through Mexico. Bill, doesn't this just prove that President Trump has managed to export his bigoted nationalism to other countries in the region?
If your argument is that President Trump is racist against Mexicans or South American people or brown people or whatever you want to call it, And the evidence of Donald Trump's racism is that the moment he expects Mexico to deal with the same problems that we deal with, and Mexico takes the exact same posture, except they will be much more enthusiastic about it because they don't have the patience that we do. If you're telling me that the proof of Donald Trump's white supremacy is that Mexico is now a white supremacist nation, then I say there's a small problem in your logic and deductive abilities.
Well, it's not just racial bigotry, but it's this idea of nationalism that basically says that Mexicans come first and that we do not have a moral obligation to shelter these people, and they're taking our jobs and they're sucking up our social welfare benefits. It just sounds a whole lot like what people accuse President Trump of doing.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that happens, isn't it? When you're forced to deal with the consequences of your actions rather than not only allowing them to be fobbed off on somebody else, but also encouraging it. Yeah, basically, I had no idea, honestly, Scott, until you showed me this data, that Mexico was such a white supremacist Aryan nation bastion of white power. I really didn't. But apparently, the Mexicans are determined to keep other hardworking people of color from entering their southern border in a fascistic and nationalistic and cruel manner. So you're right. Donald Trump is such a racist and such a Nazi that he's managed to convince the entire nation of La Raza that being a white Nazi skinhead is exactly the way to go for the country. That's one analysis of it. That's the left's analysis of it. I think a better analysis of it, that seems a little more reasonable to me, is that a policy that has been benefiting Mexico, both economically and politically, to take large numbers of their own citizens and anybody else who wants to come up through Mexico, so long as they go into America. Once it becomes clear through economic sanctions that this is not going to be tolerated anymore, now the Mexican government and the Mexican people from this poll are facing the consequences of the policies that they have had directed towards the United States for the last at least 50 years and probably closer to 200. So what it's telling me is that nobody, no matter what your color, no matter what your nationality, your religion, whether you voted for Trump or whether you voted for Elizabeth Warren or whatever, turns out that people don't like other people coming into their yards at midnight and sleeping on their couches without permission. And I find that to be an actual human argument. And if that is the case, if this is a human reaction to not want to wake up and find that the food that you've worked for has disappeared and that there are large numbers of strange people on your couch who may be very lovely people or who may not be very lovely people, but in any event who came in through your windows during the night, I find that to be pretty much a human reaction. And so that's telling me that if this is how Mexicans behave, the people of color, actual third world people, genuine people, not like us racist white people here in America, if they're behaving the same way that we are, then my God, you got to be careful about that kind of information, Scott, because if that's the case, then you've got to take great care to make sure that you don't use that argument to humanize the citizens of the United States, because if it turns out that that's a natural human reaction, then that would mean that the United States is simply behaving like any other country in the world and is not the unique home of racism, slavery, homophobia, Islamophobia, and all the rest. Turns out that nobody likes having people coming in to sleep on their couch without permission.
I was going to say, Bill, not only humanizing the people of the United States, but in effect humanizing the people of Mexico, because it's making them seem like real people. And let me put it this way. A few years back, when I lived in Pennsylvania, there was a community organization that decided to stage a Latino exposition. It was going to be basically a day in the park for Latinos in the city. Mm-hmm. And it didn't go over very well. There weren't very many people there. And I was there as a representative of an organization. And I asked one of the fellow attendees who was at another booth, basically, why it was such a light turnout. And I was told, basically, because Mexicans and Hondurans and El Salvadorans and Guatemalans don't see themselves as all one people. They do not see themselves as Latinos. They see themselves as the same way you and I would say, well, I don't have any common bond with the Swedish or the Norwegians or the French or anybody else who happens to be white or majority white in any case. What are the Democrats and people on the progressive left going to do with this data that basically shows that Mexicans don't like illegal immigration any better than American citizens like it?
Well, they're going to do what they always do. They're going to bury it. They're going to pretend it doesn't exist. And if it does come out somehow, they'll find a way to make it Donald Trump's fault. But good luck with that. There is nothing quite so pervasive as the inherent racism of progressives. When you say that to a progressive, their heads will come off and they'll say, "But I don't hate black people." It's like, I'm willing to agree that you don't hate them, but you certainly don't consider them people, because everything that you do, your policies towards Black America, towards Latino Americans, towards all the rest of this, all of your policies, all of them, are based upon the idea that rich, functioning, generous people who are white have to help these people who simply can't make it on their own. And it is the most patronizing, it is the most repulsive, demeaning kind of thing that I ever really get to come in contact with. I was an editor on a show called Sunday Morning Shootout back in the early 2000s, just before I started doing this line of work. And since I was the editor, I got to watch the raw footage. I got to watch what happened before somebody yells action, but the cameras are on. And I also get to watch what's in the show. And I remember, I'll never forget it. I'm virtually positive it was Lawrence Fishburne, because it was 12 years ago now, so more than that. But basically, Obama was just coming to prominence. This would be early 2008 or late 2007. And one of these two hosts, big liberals, I think it was probably Peter Guber who said this, said to them, to Lawrence Fishburne, said, as a Black American, how do you feel about the candidacy of Barack Obama? And to his everlasting credit, Lawrence Fishburne turned to him and said, "How about if I just answer that as an American?" And I just leapt out of my chair. Number one, out of enormous respect, admiration, and genuine love for Lawrence Fishburne, who understands this country, whether or not he agrees with my politics, I don't care. He understands what America is. But the thing about it was, this kid glove treatment, when you would get black actors on the show, these two very liberal hosts would just honest to God, you could see them putting on the white gloves, like, I don't want to say anything that might be offensive or so what you're doing is you're treating this person like a 2 or 3 year old child, and they know it.
And this is how the left is treating immigrants, basically, that
correct.
They need our help, and without our help, they would be
they're hopeless. Yeah, they can't. That's right, exactly. And so the progressive policy is, I'm going to show all the rest of the white people. Let's get right down to brass tacks here. What the progressive policy is, I'm going to show my friends, well-educated, wealthy Americans, most of them white, but many of them not. That's their own little civil war that's coming. But I'm going to show my my liberal friends just how virtuous I am by open-heartedly and willingly allowing complete strangers to come in and live in other people's homes. That's how big a person I am.
Sounds like the false bigotry of low expectations, Bill.
That's the perfect description of it. And when you hear people like Cher, who criticize Trump and all of his immigration policies, when Donald Trump has the stroke of political genius to say, okay, well, if you're an asylum city, then I guess what we'll do is, or an asylum state, we'll just send all the refugees to you. And Cher gets up on her hind legs and says, you can't send more poor people to us. There's already tons and tons of homeless people in Santa Monica. Now you know what you're dealing with. Now you know what the score is. When progressives act like, when they behave according to their principles, I will take them seriously. But do you know why that will never happen, Scott? Do you know why you will never, ever see progressives behaving according to their own principles? Let's just take a random example to illustrate what I'm talking about. Let's say that you're Bernie Sanders and you are a socialist and you didn't have a job until you became elected mayor at age 48 or whatever it was, and you spent your entire life sponging off of women that you were dating and all the rest of it. And let's say that you say that the amount of money that CEOs make in this country is obscene and that we should be taking their money in order to provide housing for poor people. Okay, I understand what's driving that, but at least it's a kind of a philosophy. When you become Bernie Sanders and you have 3 houses and you don't sell the 2 most expensive ones and give the money to poor people, then it becomes clear to anybody who's willing to pay attention that this is a scam that you are using to continue to go through life without ever having to have a job.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Whittle now comes to you 5 times a week thanks to the generosity of the members at BillWhittle.com who give of their own means voluntarily to make this possible. They also enjoy a private conservative enclave, so to speak, at a website where they've created their own blog that they post to, and some just quick posts that are entertaining, other really deep think pieces that you're going to thoroughly enjoy not only reading, but you're going to enjoy writing some of that stuff too when you become a member. Just go to BillWhittle.com and click that Become a Member link. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members for making everything possible.